Hello, brothers and sisters. Today's going to be a long one, and I'm sure some people may or may not agree with what I have to talk about today. Some people may disagree, and that's fine. You're welcome to do that. We can have respectful discussions in the comments. I was told I needed to remind people to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and share. So please do that. So today is gonna be a little long one, and YouTube might not like the subject matter, but oh well, First Amendment. So today I'm going to talk about the enemy within the country, our true enemy. I know there are a lot that out there that talk about a civil war or revolution against our government, and but I don't. That's not going to be the next war. That's a distraction. So here's the deal. The true enemy, our age-old enemy as Christians and for the Jews, would be the radical Islam. Reformed Muslims, even they reject them. That's why they could try to come here. Unfortunately, we've let these jihadists in the country in droves, as has most of Western Europe, and they're coming here illegally. They're coming right across the border, wide open. So our enemy is already on our soil. No, it's true. Our government is really failing today. They are looking to, strip us of our rights. Become more and more tyrannical, and eventually, become a dictatorship, or at least a totalitarian government. However, they're so weak and corrupt that they'd never hold on to it anyway. And that's what the enemy is looking for. These jihadists, they have already infiltrated governments and cities and towns and countries. That's how they did back in the Middle Ages until our ancestors, Templars and the Crusading Knights, kicked them out of Jerusalem for as long as we could. And kicked them back out. And then once again, the Light Brigade stopped them from once again coming across and taking over Europe again. It was really big in Spain. You heard of the Spanish War. And in Spain, Christian fighters drove them back and kicked them out. It's happening again. It's not going to stop. The jihadists hide behind the Reformed. If you notice, every time there's a terrorist attack, they say, "Oh, don't blame the Muslims, don't be Islamophobic, yada, yada, yada." It's hard to say whether the people who talk like that are trying to distract you from the jihadists or generally feel about what they're saying. I think the former is true, especially with a lot of the politicians that are in there now. If you listen to their rhetoric and the way they act, they're intentionally trying to sow discord. And the left has embraced them, which is odd. They're pushing abortion, and they're pushing LGBTQ, XYZ, whatever, this wokeness, in order to cut down our birth rate, because they breed like bunnies. They have no problem having children like Christians used to be. And once they knock down our birth rate, they then eventually just going to overpopulate us. And while we are separated by this, because you have the one side that is extreme, that are very woke, and the extreme on the right who want to eliminate everybody that isn't, on their side, and then push the rest of us in the middle to one side or the other, and just causing all kinds of division, all kinds of arguments over petty crap. And while we're confused, that's when our government will be able to take control, because the more we are at each other's throat, and if we do start a quasi-civil war, then this government's is gonna take over and become totalitarian. We'll be weak. We won't be able to even know that the enemy is there, because we'll be fighting each other. And the government, well, they're going to be too weak to hold on to it. And guess what's going to happen? The United States Caliphate, or would be Caliphate in the former United States. It's already happened in parts of England, parts of Great Britain. There's parts of London that have riots and high crime rates and so forth of the Muslim population. And now these aren't these reform Muslims, these aren't the actual women and children that people talk about. These are military-aged young men. They're the ones going over on these boats, these huge boats. They're all men. There are no women and children on there. The press will show one little boat with women and children on there. So, see, they're just women and children coming, fleeing the war, fleeing the oppression. But they don't talk about the other 10 boats full of military-aged men calling for Sharia law and jihad. And that's what's happening in London. There's parts that their police force, who's weak anyway, they've really been weakened even more, won't go into. This population is not assimilating. They're not becoming American. They're not looking for freedom. They're fleeing oppression. They're the oppressors. And in London, they already have organized crime set up, sex trafficking, crimes against white women. I'm sure black women too, the blacks that are in London. And when the police show up, they push the police aside. So the police don't even go there because they get abused and beat up. What's happening in New York? Think of that on a grand scale. Think about tens of thousands of protesters attacking the police. A handful of police officers. Yeah, they don't go in those areas in London. They're gone. They're completely gone. Dearborn, Michigan is a Muslim town. Oh, it is. They do call prayer every morning on loudspeaker. They have instituted Sharia law. They have Sharia patrols in Minneapolis. In 2014, it was brought out, and they were told by city leaders, you can't do this, this is illegal. But they haven't stopped. They're still out there. I know. I've been through there working security on armored trucks, driving through there. I've seen them. They're still there. They're just not as open. They're learning to hide, which is what they're doing. They're hiding among us. They're waiting for us to be weak and the government to fail, fighting each other and distracted, and that's where they're going to take over. They've already started. And the jihadist is very patient. Look how long it took them to do 9/11. how long they planned for that, for just the right time for them. Even the date, 9/11, is significant to them. So that's the true enemy. That's the true war that's coming. Now, you can't prevent it. There's no way to stop it. And it's predicted in Revelation that these things are going to come to pass, that these things are going to happen. They're going to happen eventually, either to us or our children or grandchildren, but it is going to happen. So how do we fight against it? Well, here's the thing. I know there's people that have the idea that there's the only good Muslim is a dead one. That's not a good attitude to have, and let me tell you why. As Christ said, we should be loving our enemies, fierce in battle, magnanimous in victory. And that goes with any spiritual war, propaganda war, a physical war. But these, I'm going to call them reformed. They do not follow the whole Quran. That's why they're reformed. Jihadists do, to the letter, every sentence. It says you can lie to the infidel, use the infidel, and they're hiding behind this reformed. Again, we're not supposed to, we can't talk bad against them, so they don't call alert to it. Now, these reformed do live in fear. Jihadists are all around them, that their own family members. In the Quran, it says if you become an apostate and you do not follow the Quran, or you are turn away from Islam, the punishment is death. And they still believe that, and their families will kill their own because of that. Anybody that has served in Iraq or Afghanistan or been to Syria, they've seen what these jihadists do to their own people. Look what Hamas does to their own people. What they did to Israelis, they do that to their own people. They rule by fear and terror. That's why they're called terrorists, but that's how they rule. That is how true, to the letter, Islam is. To the letter in the Quran. So the Reformed are fleeing that. And we shouldn't think that they're the enemy too. They're not. Not necessarily. Like I said, they're running from it too. And if we show them animosity, they have nowhere to go. So who they're going to support? Well, they're going to support the jihadists because, well, if either of us are going to kill them and they already know how to survive around them, they're going to stick to that side. And they're going to keep their mouth shut and they're not going to say anything. They're just going to keep their head down and keep moving. If we want them to stand up for themselves, get the American spirit, and say, hey, you're not going to tell me what to do. If this is wrong, I'm going to call it out. That is the American spirit. If we want these reformed to be like that, which why would we not? We have to let them know that there is a safe place for them. They do not have to hide from the jihadists. They will be protected. That is not only the commandment of Christ, but that is one of our commandments, one of our creeds as Christian soldiers. As a Templar, I know that my ancestors not only protected the Christians in Jerusalem, but Muslims and Jews as well. They did. They kept the peace, and they treated them all the same. We need to return to that. Again, you don't have to agree with their faith. But if they're trying to be peaceful, if they're trying to flee the violence, we should be helping them. In fact, because not only will they then, open up more and say, hey, this person is planning an attack, or this, they'll start, because they know that they're going to be protected. They know they're going to be safe, but they don't know that right now. Thanks to the left, it's trying to separate everybody. We need to do the opposite. Think about the conversions that Christ has already made amongst the Jews and the Muslims and atheists and the heathens. But especially, there's so many stories coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan. You can find them on YouTube all over, where violent jihadists have converted to Christ. He came to them and said, why do you persecute me? And one died. He was shot by, I assume, one of our forces there, friendly forces. And because he was a jihadist, I think he was an ISIS member. If you Google ISIS converts to Christ or something in that kind of a wording, I'm sure you'll find it. But he died. He was in a hospital, and he remembers dying and going to hell. He was in the abyss. He saw the picture of who he thought was Allah, and then, of course, turned out to be Satan. And then Christ appeared and held out his hand, and he said, "Oh, screw this," and he went to Christ. I mean, he converted. He says, "Oh, I'm sorry," He woke up converted. Got out of the hospital converted. I dated a Jewish gal for a while, and she was going to become a Messianic Jew, or basically convert to Christ. A Jew that converted to Christ to become a Christian. In some parts of Israel, in the Jewish community, they're not welcome. Now, most of this isn't the normal Jewish people. Like I said, they're good people, by and large. But we're talking like the Sanhedrin, which does still exist. The high religious leaders, the Orthodox and the rabbis, they don't like Christians and they don't like Muslims. I mean, they tolerate them, but they're not really happy about them because they're not Jewish. But the Messianic Jews, they don't like them at all because they turn their back on Judaism in their mind. Now, again, this is not the regular Jews. This is the high leadership, and so they don't treat them the best. They give them attitudes. They're not violent towards them, but they, don't really respect them. On the other hand, in Islam, according to the Quran, if you become an apostate, like I said, the punishment is death. And there are a lot of Muslims in these countries that have converted to Christianity and then had to go into hiding until they can come here for safety. That's why they were complaining about the Christians, because there are Christians, by the way, there are Christians in Palestine, there's Christians in all Arab countries. And by and large, they have to keep a small footprint. But if they're a Muslim that converted to Christianity, yeah, they have a target on their back. They will be tortured and murdered. That's it. That's the way it goes. That's the way it's said. That's what the Quran says. So that's what they're going to do. The jihadists. So they're looking for a safe place to go. Kind of funny that our current State Department won't, and even under Obama, would not let these converted Christians immigrate to here. But if any of the Islamic refugees, oh yeah, anytime you want, keep going, keep going, keep going. The Christian ones, no, you're stuck. We can't help you. I don't understand. Well, I understand it, but I don't understand it. Does that make sense? I understand, but it's not the way it's supposed to be. So we need to keep an open place and a heart to protect those who are running from it, whether they be Reformed Muslim or Christian or Jew or whatever. We need to keep a safe space from them running from the violence. They know that they're protected. They will help us defeat them because they don't want them around either. We need to remember that. Plus, just being a good Christian, you treat everybody with respect until their actions dictate otherwise. Something to think about too, which I think is kind of odd. The far left, who consider themselves intellectuals, but they're not very smart. All this woke ideology, yeah, the Reformed and the strict jihadists, Islamists, they're not okay with that. But they're a lot more forceful than conservative Christians are. Again, that's a little bit of a difference. And anyway, so they're using them to get into power, and then as soon as the jihadists get power, guess what's going to happen to the far left? Or they'll be made into slaves. And the ones that decide to convert to Islam, say, oh no, don't kill me, I'll be Islamic. They're going to be one step above the slaves, but they're still not going to be very high in their society. Okay, they're going to be serving people that were born into Islam. Same with Christians who decide not to stand up. When this war comes, do you want to be a martyr for Christ? Or you want to kneel to the religion of Satan? You'll live a little while longer at least. But really, will you? Or you get sucked into that eternal death? I'd rather be a martyr, if I had to be. However, that's not happening yet. But we do need to continue to preach the gospel. We do need to push for reforms in our government. We need to push back and delay. Don't have to make it easy on Satan. He's going to lose anyway. So, we can't stop the war, but we can delay it and make the people conducting the war work harder to try and push it. Does that make sense? So the real enemy, for now, we need to pray, we need to get organized, we need to fight the wokeness, because if we have a strong government that is not tyrannical, it's going to put off the enemy's plans because they're not going to be able to take over the government. And if we heal society and start coming together on a lot of things, which is what wokeness is. Wokeness is about separating people. We need to get people back together again. If we do that, we become stronger as a society. That will push them back. And yes, there is a tactical side to it. Those of us who are actual soldiers. There is that part of it. And yes, you do need to train. Protect yourself and your family. I'm not saying there's a war coming. There's a war now. There isn't. And I'm not saying to use violence. Remember, we are defenders. We're not aggressors. When they become violent, we respond with violence only as far as we need to protect ourselves and defend ourselves, defend our churches. Now, there is also, of course, the mentally challenged come from the left they're going to continue to push. We need to push back on them. It's not going to be easy. It's just going to be a rough thing to do, but we need to start doing that, because if you haven't already, then you're way behind, because the enemy has been building in the U.S. for a long time. Well, just recently, the jihadists attacked the Orthodox bishop, Armari, Emmanuel. When are we going to stand up and say no? The Christian church, the Catholic Church, needs to stand up and strongly condemn them. Churches need to have security, because this is going to happen again and again. That was in Australia. Wait till they come here. The only reason why they haven't got as violent in the U.S. is because of the Second Amendment and because of the American attitude. You're not going to tell us what to do. And they know that if they pull shenanigans here, it's not going to end well for them. So it doesn't happen quite as much. But eventually it will. And again, we got to be ready for that. But until then, we need to make Christ strong in this country. And if we can convert people on, we don't convert people. If we can lead people to Christ, we can convert them along the way and build the Christian community, that's even better. But now we want strong Christians, not weak Christians. We don't want the Christians to say, like, well, you have to love everybody, so we'll just leave the left alone, let them be. No, sorry, we have to fight back on that. Let them be in their own world, but don't let them force on our children. Don't let it force them on us. No. Christ was not for that. So that's what I have to say today. As I said, I'm not calling for violence, but I am calling for pushback and for prayer. I don't want the U.S. to become London. It's not an example, because they're really going bad now. They really went down the socialist path, and they picked up the wokenesses in every form of the government, and they're giving way to the jihadi horde. Absolutely they are. That's why they have increased terror attacks in London. Pretty soon Ireland is going to have more immigrants than Irish. And these immigrants are military-age young men. These aren't women and children. So, or very few. So, that is something that we don't want to happen here. We need to stand strong and prepare. Even if it's just to stay at your homestead and protect your family. It's bad enough crime is out of hand. Criminals are being let go and not even arrested. Bad enough we got to defend ourselves against that. This is a spiritual war against Satan. And he's using everything he can, because he knows he's going down. That's how we know we're in the end times. It's getting worse and worse and worse. In regards to what's happening with Israel in the Middle East there, I might do a separate episode that in the future. I got to do some more research and do some more reading and talk to my leaders in that order, So I want to make sure I get my facts straight on that, because, that's like listening to people talk about Ukraine. First of all, it's not our war, and they shouldn't be fighting each other to begin with, but We started it. Back in the 90s when the wall fell, the U.S. started it. And now look where we are. They talk about Nazis that are in Ukraine. Well, guess who trained them and armed them? We did. Because we wanted a puppet we could control, so we put Zelensky in. Now look what's happening. They're gonna fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. And then don't be surprised if they start drafting in order to build up troop numbers to send our troops in there to fight them, to fight Russia. That's their ultimate goal. Don't be surprised. That's why next November is really important. But again, that too is another video. So anyway, keep your head up. Be aware. Put on the armor of God. And if someone tries to push down your faith, push back, stand up. We can't let Satan have control. We can beat him. We have God on our side. He's greater than Satan. Okay. Some websites you should check out. Able Shepherds is a good one, Christian-based. Right now they're concentrating on tactical training and safety for children and in schools. Sheepdog Response is another good one. Warrior Poet Society, which also has, and all these have YouTube pages as well. The Warrior Poet Society, another good Christian-based. John Lovell runs that one. Ranger. Tim Kennedy, Green Beret, he a CIA operative. He does the Sheepdog Response. Able Shepherd, I don't know the man's name, but he too was, I don't remember if he was I believe he was a SEAL. Again, another good Christian-based organization. And if you live in Texas, in a district that incorporates San Antonio, make sure in May, in the runoff election, you vote for Brandon Herrera. So we can vote Tony Gonzalez, that rhino, they can vote him out. I'm in Minnesota, I can't vote for Brandon, but I support him. If you're in the gun community, as I am, you already know who Brandon is. He's one of the reasons I got into AKs. So, but no, he is a good candidate. He is a good man. Make sure he gets some support too. So, with that, keep the faith and deuce vault.